So here's something interesting. You're walking through a South African shopping mall and you see something that would have been unthinkable just a decade ago. Kids in school uniforms, some barely 16 years old, casually puffing on colorful electronic devices. That smell, it smells like candy. But what you're actually witnessing there isn't candy. It's the front line of a billion-plus rand industry that's exploding across South Africa. An industry that's creating 920,000 vapers in our country alone, with nearly 17% of our high school students now addicted to this nicotine or nicotine salts. Welcome to the vaping revolution, a multi-billion rand global empire that's rewriting the rules of addiction, one flavored puff at a time. Now, this isn't just another trending story. Over the next couple of minutes, we're going to explore and expose how exactly these traditional tobacco companies like the BATs of the world have turned a 29% profit increase from South African vapers and how they've engineered 8,000 candy flavored products specifically designed. And I'm not saying that it's just for them, but the kids are getting hooked. Now, if you're a teacher, a parent, a student, or someone who cares about South Africa's future, this video will change how you see those innocent-looking, battery-looking devices forever. Because what's happening in our schools and universities isn't just a health crisis. It's a calculated business strategy that's generating billions of rands while destroying young lives. And it's time that we all know and speak the truth. What's interesting to note here just off the bat is how the financial landscape tells the real story. In 2025, South Africa's cigarette market is projected to generate a staggering 14.8 billion rands in revenue. But take a closer look at the vaping industry. It's growing at breakneck speed, with the e-cigarette market jumping from $62 million in 2023 to a projected $100 million by 2030. That's a 7.2 compounded annual growth rate. What you need to understand here is the scale of youth involvement. That's when things really hit the fan. There's a groundbreaking study by the University of Cape Town that has surveyed over 25,000 high school students across 52 schools. And what they found is genuinely alarming. 16.8% of high school learners are currently vaping. That's nearly 1 in 6 kids. To fully get what's going on here, consider this progression. In grade 12, that number skyrockets to 29.5%, with some schools reporting a usage rate as high as 46%. We're literally watching half of our graduating class this year get hooked onto nicotine or nicotine salts before they even reach adulthood. Now, what do you think is driving this explosion in youth vaping? I want you to drop your comments down below. I'm actually quite curious to hear your perspective on this. I feel like I might be overthinking this, but you guys can let me know. Now, what should concern every single parent is this reality. 14% of teen vapers use their device within the first hour of waking up. This thing is a proper drug. That's a textbook sign of nicotine addiction. Even more disturbing, 11.8% of students admit that they can't get through a day without vaping. We're talking about children here who are literally dependent on nicotine to function. Take a closer look at these patterns. The research reveals that 88% of teen vapers use nicotine-containing products and 38% are vaping almost daily. More than half vape 4 or more days per week. This is the real pandemic here. Using a novel addiction scoring system, researchers estimate that up to 61% of teen vapers could seriously be addicted to nicotine already. What's also particularly troubling is that 46% of the students don't even recognize that their behavior, what they're doing, is an addiction. One 17-year-old girl in the study said it perfectly. It's an addiction because no matter what I try, I just can't stop. Another 18-year-old described it as a habit. I have to consume something, this something, constantly. To fully get what's happening here in its entirety, you need to understand the speed at which addiction actually develops. In fact, have you guys noticed any changes in the young people who are around you since they've started vaping specifically? Share your observations in the comments. The path to addiction is rather fascinating and deeply concerning, frankly scary. Over half of the students, 50.6%, in this research paper, they cited that social influences were the reason for them starting. Peer pressure, family influence, or simply wanting to fit in. Another 20% started vaping to cope with the stress and anxiety that they were faced with, while 16.2% were driven by curiosity. I mean, the damn things look cool. But take a closer look at how this changes once addiction sets in. The reasons for starting are completely different from the reasons for continuing. Once you're hooked, 28.4% of the students said that they continued vaping to cope with anxiety, depression, and stress, while the 14.9% admitted that they were just simply addicted. At least they were aware enough. What's interesting to note here is the transformation from social activity to medical or addictive dependency. Kids think that they're just experimenting or just trying to fit in, but within days, they're chemically dependent on this nicotine. Our national survey data reveals that amongst all vapers, 41.5% use vaping for stress relief, the highest reported reason. This suggests that we're dealing with more than just a trend here. We're dealing with young people who are self-medicating with an addictive substance, one that some are aware of and others aren't. But what role do you think that social media and peer pressure play together in this epidemic? Let me know your thoughts down below. Let's get talking. Let's find solutions. So who's really winning in this vaping boom? I can tell you one thing, it's not the kids or their families. We've got to look at companies like BAT, which saw a 29% revenue increase in its new category segments, largely driven by higher vaping revenue from South Africa and New Zealand. The company's vapor revenue jumped 35.5% in just 6 months, with volumes increasing by 9%. Take a closer look at how brilliantly they've repositioned themselves. Big Tobacco has completely rebranded its image. They've co-opted the term harm reduction, which originally referred to evidence-based approaches to reduce drug-related harm, and they've twisted it to market their products as safer alternatives to traditional cigarettes.
At BAT, we want to give smokers the option to switch to better. We want to build a smokeless world where tobacco harm reduction is understood and accepted. And smokers have made the switch to smokeless products.
But what's also interesting in a terrible way that we have to note is the sophistication of their strategy. The industry has funded its own research to discredit independent studies, paid media outlets to publish sponsored articles, and even sponsored content that appeared on major South African news platforms. This is scary, guys. They're not just selling a product, they're selling a carefully crafted narrative that vaping is safe, it's cool, and it's socially acceptable, which it's not. To fully get what's happening here, we've got to consider that since e-cigarettes entered the market in 2010, there's no evidence showing that smoking has actually decreased. Instead, they're seeing dual use, people who are vaping and smoking traditional cigarettes. Even more concerning, about 32% of people aged between 16 and 34 who have never smoked are now using e-cigarettes. That's up from just 14% in 2018. Do you think that tobacco companies should be held accountable for targeting younger people? Share your opinions in the comments. So what's happening in schools right now is pretty tricky. Teachers are constantly confiscating vaping devices from students. Some schools are reporting that they need to install additional vape detectors in bathrooms because traditional smoke detectors, some of them just don't pick up the vaping aerosol. What's particularly insidious is also how the industry has made these vaping products incredibly easy to access. Students report that they can order vapes through platforms, online platforms. Yes, online platforms. The same apps that you use to order groceries or even takeouts. They're delivering these addictive nicotine products directly to minors. The impact on education is profound. When 11.8% of students can't get through a day without vaping, we're talking about kids whose ability to learn and concentrate is being compromised and hindered by this silent addiction. I don't even think it's silent anymore. Nicotine affects the developing brain's prefrontal cortex, which impacts your cognitive and executive functions. This is detrimental to young people. But what do you think that schools should be doing to address this crisis? I'd love to hear from you. If you're a teacher, parent, and even a student, jump into the comments. Let us know how things are in your schooling environment. Then you've got to look at things like those flavors. We're talking about 7,000 to 8,000 different sweet vape flavors, which include varieties like gummy bears, bubble gum, caramel candy. These aren't designed for adults trying to quit smoking. They're specifically engineered to appeal to a certain demographic. And I'm going to say that that demographic is looking mightily like teenagers and children. The marketing is incredibly sophisticated as well. Vaping products, they come in these flashy designs and they look more like toys or tech gadgets than tobacco products. It's not just simple plain black. They're available in bright colors, sleek designs, and they often resemble USB drives or everyday items, making them easy to conceal from parents and teachers. Hence, people are like saying, yeah, you guys are smoking like external hard drives. What makes this rather concerning, to me at least, is that in the contrary to the myths perpetuated by the industry, vaping actually isn't safe. The chemical compositions of those flavors, like a cherry, cinnamon, and vanilla, they've been shown to cause damages to lung lining as well as blood vessels. Even non-nicotine vapes, they pose a health risk to developing lungs and hearts. Like in the past, South Africa isn't sitting idle in the face of this new wave of tobacco epidemic. The government has introduced the Tobacco Products and Electronic Delivery Systems Control Bill, which represents a pretty comprehensive approach to regulating the vaping industry, almost in the same way that they heavily regulated the cigarette industry. The proposed legislation includes some pretty serious measures which I think need to be looked at. They want to ban all flavored e-cigarettes and disposable devices, the flavored ones. They also want to increase taxes, excise duties to be exact, from 3 Rand and 4 cents to 3 Rand and 18 cents per millimeter in 2025. They're also looking at strict age restrictions, no sale to under 18s. Then there's workplace and public space restrictions that they want to put into place. Then there's advertising bans and plain packaging requirements with clear health warnings. Then there's point of sale restrictions. These are some of the things that they want to put in place. The potential penalties are pretty severe. Fines, imprisonment of up to 20 years for serious offenses, business closures, and product confiscation. The government is putting their foot down, and many feel that this is the right way forward. But here's the challenge. The bill has been in development since 2018, and we've seen the number of smokers grow from 9.5 million to 14.9 million during that same period. The vaping rate among 16 to 34-year-olds has nearly doubled from 4.1% in 2018 to 7.7% today. The proposed excise tax could generate up to 2.2 billion Rand in revenue if e-cigarettes are taxed at 75% of the cigarette tax rate. This isn't just about health, it's about recouping the massive social and economic costs of this epidemic as well. But do you think that the government response is sufficient, justified, or should they be doing more or even less? Let us know in the comments. To be completely honest with you, South Africa, we're at a crossroads. We can either allow this vaping epidemic to continue growing, creating a generation of nicotine addicted young people, or we can take decisive action now to protect our youth and hold the industry more accountable. The vaping industry has shown us exactly who they are. Companies willing to profit from youth addiction while hiding behind the claims of harm reduction. They've successfully created a new generation of nicotine users, while traditional tobacco companies reap record profits. This is happening at the exact same time. But we've also seen that change is possible and change is on the table. The research exists, the legislation is ready, and public awareness is growing. By you watching this, you're actually becoming more aware. What we need now is action from lawmakers, educators, parents, and young people themselves. The question isn't whether vaping is slightly less harmful than smoking. It's whether or not we're going to allow any industry to deliberately addict our kids, our children, our brothers, our sisters to nicotine for profit. In finality, what do you think the next steps should be in addressing this crisis? I want to hear from everybody. I want to hear from the teachers. I want to hear from the students. I want to hear from the policymakers who are watching this, and even the concerned citizens. Your voice actually matters. It matters in this fight for young people's futures. Let's continue this conversation in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video up until this point. I hope it was as interesting and as shocking to you as it was for us to make for you. Check out one of these other videos and hopefully they'll be just as interesting as this one. Cheers.